Have you ever walked into a room and immediately felt the atmosphere shift? No one says it aloud, yet the glances, the silence, and the forced smiles are enough to tell you, someone here does not like you. That quiet hostility never comes head-on. It hides in polite words, in half-hearted compliments, in the way the energy seems to sink the moment you arrive. The question is, what should you do? Argue, explain, or pretend not to notice? Stoic philosophy points us to another path, a path of silence yet strength, where you do not need to shout to affirm yourself. You only need to stand firm, calm, and let your life itself become the answer. In this video, I will share 9 quiet yet strategic ways to rise above hatred, not with words, but with steadfast presence. 1. Forgiveness. Lay down the burden. Keep your freedom. Forgiveness is one of the hardest acts a person can perform, yet it is also the purest expression of inner strength. When people think of forgiveness, many misunderstand it as weakness, as allowing others to cross boundaries, or as abandoning justice just to preserve peace. In truth, forgiveness has little to do with the one who wronged you. It is not the erasure of what happened, nor is it a false handshake of reconciliation. Forgiveness, in the Stoic sense, is the decision to free yourself from the weight of resentment, anger, and the toxic emotions that drain your life each day. When you refuse to forgive, you believe you hold power by remembering the faults of others, yet in reality you become a prisoner of your own memory and emotions. The Stoics repeatedly emphasized that the only thing fully within your control is your own thoughts, choices, and actions. Betrayal, harm, or slander from others lies beyond your influence. You cannot govern the poison in their minds, but you can decide how to respond. You can choose not to let their bitterness poison your life. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." Forgiveness is the way to affirm that truth. By releasing hatred, you do not mirror cruelty. You become free, independent, and unbound by the venom of resentment. Resentment has a quiet yet corrosive power. It is like acid dripping day after day, eroding the peace of the mind. Those who carry resentment rarely realize how much time and energy they give to the past, leaving the present distorted and the future clouded. Forgiveness is like laying down a heavy load after a long journey. Your shoulders discover a lightness they have never felt before. This is not weakness, but the strength to dare to liberate yourself. To the Stoics, forgiveness is a silent declaration. I no longer allow the past to define me. Forgiveness is also training reason to rise above emotion. Epictetus said that if someone can make you angry, they have become your master. This reveals a simple truth. When you let yourself be ruled by anger or revenge, you hand over control of your life. Forgiveness is reclaiming that power. It does not change the past, but it transforms your relationship to it. Instead of remaining a victim bound by memory, you become the author who redefines your story. To practice forgiveness is to focus only on what matters and what is within your control. You cannot control rumors, malice, or the behavior of others, but you can control the peace within yourself. Forgiveness is telling yourself, my peace is no longer up for negotiation by anyone's actions. This is a strength no one can take away because it lies entirely in your hands. That is what makes forgiveness a form of quiet victory, unyielding, unspoken because your enemy no longer has power over your soul. 2. Keeping silence before provocation. There is a truth most of us forget. Not every attack deserves a response. The world will always have people who test your limits using words, gestures, even silence to provoke, hoping you lose yourself in anger. But if you fall into that trap, you have allowed them to decide your emotions. The Stoics understood that an outburst of rage is never a mark of strength, but evidence that you are being controlled. Stoic philosophy teaches that silence is not avoidance, but a conscious choice. When insulted, you can reply immediately, but that only fuels another spiral of tension. Instead, you may choose silence, letting the attack fade like an echo into emptiness. Epictetus reminded us that it is not events that harm us, but our response to them. If you believe words can wound you, they will, but if you remain clear-minded, you see them for what they are, mere sounds, powerless unless you grant them weight. Silence in such moments is not cowardice, but the strength of one who knows there is nothing to prove. When you react instantly, you admit that the other holds sway over your state of mind. By contrast, silence declares that your thoughts and emotions belong to you alone. This is a different kind of strength, one that radiates from calmness and mastery within. In modern society, many mistake quick, sharp reactions as signs of confidence. But the truth is the opposite. The ability to remain calm under provocation is the real sign of stability. The Stoics valued delaying reaction, for it creates space where reason can rise above impulse. In silence, you can observe, distinguish what truly matters from mere noise, and act only when needed. This composure separates the one who is led from the one who leads. Silence also carries a subtle power. It forces the aggressor to confront themselves. Those who try to provoke feel unsettled when they see their efforts fail. They expect an explosion but meet unshaken calm instead. This not only disarms them but exposes the futility of their attempt. Without a word, your silence sends the message, "You do not control me." The Stoics also stressed that silence does not mean tolerating abuse without end. It is not endless submission. Silence is a tool, a shield that protects you from reckless reaction. When you finally choose to speak, it comes from reason, not impulse. In this way, silence is the first step to control, and control is the foundation of freedom. Keeping silence before provocation is not only a personal response, but a strategy for life. It preserves energy, prevents meaningless battles, and keeps your mind fixed on what truly matters. The Stoics refused to trade their peace for a fleeting moment of anger. They understood that silence is sometimes the loudest answer, for it guards you not only from external chaos, but proves that your soul has matured, steady and unshaken by the noise of the world. 3. Serenity. Choosing peace over being right. Serenity is one of the most elusive yet most essential qualities in Stoic philosophy. Many mistake serenity for indifference, believing it to be detachment from everything or avoidance of responsibility. But serenity in the Stoic sense is entirely different. It is not neglect or lack of care, but a conscious decision to preserve peace within, even when surrounded by conflict, friction, and injustice. It is not a refusal to face reality, but the choice to place inner calm above the need to win every argument. People are often drawn into battles over right and wrong by the ego, by the need to prove their worth through debate and assertion. When someone insults, attacks, or distorts the truth, the natural reaction for most is to respond, to defend the self, to prove they are not wrong, or at least not weak. Yet the Stoics knew that endless disputes rarely yield real outcomes. What they leave behind is usually exhaustion, lost peace, and sometimes lasting wounds for both sides. Serenity does not mean ignoring truth or accepting injustice, but recognizing that some battles are not worth fighting because the price is your own peace of mind. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that people act wrongly not because they intend to harm you, but because they do not know better. Understanding this helps us temper bitterness and hold on to serenity. When confronted with hurtful behavior, you may react like most anger, arguments, and a descent into weariness. But there is another choice: to remain composed, to accept that the other acts from ignorance, and not to let it rob you of your calm. This choice is difficult, yet wise, for it gives you mastery over your emotions instead of letting others govern your state of mind. In modern life, where social media and news demand immediate reactions, serenity is rare yet invaluable. Many think quick and sharp responses show intelligence and strength, but true wisdom and power lie in holding silence and observing before reacting. To the Stoics, serenity is a shield that guards against the noise outside. When you place the peace of your soul above the hunger for right and wrong, you no longer fall into pointless conflicts, and you preserve energy for what truly matters. Serenity is not the final goal, but a means to remain clear-sighted and true to your values. When you choose peace over clinging to being right, you do not diminish yourself. You prove that your worth does not need validation through confrontation. This serenity makes you steadfast, for it shows you have risen above the ego and chosen to live by reason. And that is the true strength of the Stoic: not victory in every debate, but victory over the self, keeping the soul unshaken by trivial things. Serenity is the silent declaration that your life is not shaped by the constant need for recognition, but by the inner freedom you cultivate each day. It is the reminder that sometimes the way to win is not to enter the fight at all, and that peace within is always worth more than any outward victory. 4. Rebuilding, let results be the answer. When faced with betrayal, loss, or attack, the first instinct of many is to retaliate. We want to prove we are not weak, that we cannot be disregarded, and the fastest way seems to be with words or actions against those who hurt us. But Stoic philosophy shows that such reactions bring no peace. They bind you into an endless cycle of resentment and defense. The Stoic chooses a different path. Instead of arguing or striking back, they channel all energy into rebuilding themselves, letting their results become the most powerful response. Rebuilding is not a sudden act, but a steady process, demanding discipline and persistence. It begins with accepting reality, facing loss, and realizing that while the past cannot be changed, the present is still in your hands. The Stoic wastes no time on blame, for they know that time spent in anger is time stolen from the work of renewal. They do not ask, "Why did this happen to me?" but, "What can I do now to turn this into training for myself?" This shift in mindset transforms tragedy into opportunity, forming the foundation of rebuilding. When you pour your strength into renewal, you send a silent yet powerful message. You are not defined by failure or betrayal, but by how you rise afterward. Every slander, every scheme loses weight when met with the reality that you keep moving forward, still building value, still standing strong. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "It's not what happens to you, but how you respond that matters." Rebuilding is the clearest embodiment of that wisdom. You need not explain or defend yourself, for the results alone will speak with undeniable force. Rebuilding is also proof that you choose action over reaction. Reactions come from emotion. Actions are guided by reason and long-term vision. When you are busy constructing a new path, there is no room left for bitterness or despair. The work of renewal itself becomes a remedy, freeing the mind from the grip of the past and fixing it on what is within reach now. This process not only creates outer results, but also strengthens the inner self, for each step affirms that you still govern your own life. The Stoics believed success does not need to be announced. It is like dawn, no applause required, yet powerful enough to dispel the night. When you rebuild with integrity and persistence, others cannot help but notice. Those who once wished for your fall will grow silent, not because you sought revenge, but because your very existence becomes proof beyond denial that you are stronger than they imagined. And this is a form of quiet triumph, neither loud nor defensive, but deeper and more lasting than any revenge. Rebuilding is your affirmation to yourself. 5. Choose virtue, not recognition. One of the deepest roots of insecurity lies in caring too much about how others see us. We spend countless hours guessing what they think, fearing their judgment, their ridicule, or their lack of approval. This dependence on outside eyes makes us prisoners in the prison of public opinion. The Stoics taught that no chains weigh heavier than the craving for acceptance. When we live only to win applause, we lose inner freedom, for we have handed the power over our peace to others. Epictetus once said that if you truly want to improve yourself, be ready for others to think you foolish or naive. Behind this seemingly harsh advice lies a liberating truth. The path to growth always requires placing virtue above praise or blame. This is not indifference to society, but an understanding that recognition is fleeting, while moral character is a lasting foundation. People may change their opinion of you overnight, but the core values you choose will shape your life forever. The opinions of others are like the wind, at times refreshing, at times bitterly cold, sometimes in your favor, sometimes against you. If your peace depends on them, you will drift like a boat without an anchor. But if your anchor is virtue, you will stand firm even when the winds change. The Stoics believed true freedom does not lie in pleasing everyone, but in living faithfully to the principles you have chosen. Virtue, in the Stoic spirit, is not distant or abstract. It is courage, justice, temperance, and wisdom expressed in daily action. When you speak truth, though it may displease others, you are choosing virtue. When you show patience instead of anger, you are choosing virtue. When you act justly, even when no one is watching, you are choosing virtue. These small choices gathered together build a life of integrity and freedom. Ask yourself, am I living to please others, or am I acting in accord with what I know is right? The answer determines whether you live as a free person or as a puppet pulled by the strings of opinion. The Stoics urged us to write down our core values and make them our compass. When faced with rejection or misunderstanding, do not ask, why don't they approve of me? But rather, have I been true to my principles? If the answer is yes, then you are on the right path, no matter what others think. Choosing virtue over recognition is the harder road, for it may cost you temporary support, but in return it grants lasting peace. For the voice of virtue within is stronger and more enduring than any applause outside. People may admire you today and forget you tomorrow, but the integrity you cultivate will walk with you to the end of life. When we understand this, we see that the greatest freedom is to live by our own principles, not by the desires of the crowd. And this is the foundation of the Stoic life, to stand firm in virtue, unmoved by the shifting tides of recognition. 6. The story you tell is what hurts you. Every person must face the blows of life. Failure at work, the end of a relationship, an unexpected rejection, or mistakes that leave us with regret. Yet the pain we feel does not come solely from the event itself. It is largely fed by the story our minds weave around it. An event has limits in time, but the story we spin can last months, even years, because we replay it, exaggerate it, and keep coloring it darker. The Stoics pointed out that what makes us suffer is not the objective event, but our interpretation of it. Marcus Aurelius once wrote that if something external causes you pain, it is not the thing itself, but your judgment of it that is the true cause. This means the event itself is neutral, while the negative emotion comes from the meaning we attach to it. A rejection is simply a rejection, but the mind can turn it into proof that we will always be alone. A mistake is simply a mistake, but wrapped in a dark narrative, it becomes evidence that we will never be good enough. The difference between the event and the story is something most of us rarely stop to recognize. We confuse what happened with the meaning we created, treating them as one. But in reality, the gap between them is vast. It is in that gap where negative thoughts multiply. When we fail to separate fact from interpretation, we let the mind invent painful scenarios and then believe in them as if they were reality. The Stoics proposed a simple yet powerful practice. Start by writing down the event exactly as it happened, without additions or explanations. Then, write down the story your mind is telling. Finally, ask, is this story necessarily true, or is it only assumption? When we pause to question, we often realize that much of our pain is born from imagination. And since it is only a story, we can write a new one. Rewriting the story is not lying or painting reality with false colors. It is a deliberate choice. We cannot change the event, but we can change our interpretation so that it does not harm us more than it must. A failure can be seen as proof of weakness, but it can also be seen as an opportunity to learn. A breakup can be an ending, but it can also be the beginning of growth. Which story we choose determines the strength of our spirit. The Stoics knew that while no one can avoid the strikes of life, we can avoid hurting ourselves further with false stories. Clarity between event and interpretation gave them freedom. For when we recognize that we have the power to choose the story, we also recognize we have the power to choose the depth of our suffering. Thus, the real pain does not lie in the event, but in the story we tell ourselves about it. If we repeat negative stories, we will live forever in their shadow. But if we stop, observe, and rewrite the story with clarity, we find the path out of torment. And in that moment, we step closer to the inner freedom Stoicism has always aimed toward. 7. Gratitude extinguishes negativity. Negativity in the mind is often fueled by a constant sense of lack. When we focus only on what we do not have not achieved, or have lost, our thoughts grow narrow, retreating into a dark tunnel where everything is tinted with discontent. In that darkness, anxiety, envy, and despair find room to multiply. The Stoics long ago recognized this mechanism and discovered a powerful antidote: gratitude. Gratitude is not pretending everything is fine, nor is it an empty slogan of self-comfort. It is a conscious act of pulling the mind out of the shadows of deficiency and into the light of presence. To be grateful is to force ourselves to notice what we still have, what still exists in our lives, small perhaps, but real. This does not erase pain, but it robs pain of its power to spread, preventing it from growing into despair. Seneca once wrote that the truly poor person is not the one with little, but the one who always desires more. This reminder shows that the essence of misery lies not in circumstance, but in how we define sufficiency. A mind drowning in endless desire will always feel lacking. But a mind that pauses to acknowledge what it already holds discovers fullness. Gratitude transforms this perception, lifting us out of the pit of negativity. Life's problems always pull at us strongly, forcing us to see them as everything, but in truth, they are only fragments of a larger picture. Gratitude is the tool that widens the frame, allowing us to see that beyond difficulty, many things still unfold in goodness. It keeps us from being consumed by a single problem, giving us the balance needed to endure. Gratitude is also a form of courage, for it does not deny pain but chooses to face it with light. Instead of letting darkness dominate, it fixes the mind on what remains valuable. This is not avoidance, but affirmation. Even in suffering, reasons to continue still exist. It shows that humans possess the power to choose perspective, and from that choice, new strength arises. The enemy of gratitude is forgetfulness. When we forget the trials we have overcome, the gifts we have received, or the people who have stood by us, we erase our own sources of strength. Gratitude must therefore be practiced daily, not only when life is smooth, but especially when it is hard. Writing down 3 things to be grateful for each day, as small as a warm meal or the gentle sound of rain, plants seeds of peace in the mind. When storms of worry, doubt, and despair strike, gratitude is the anchor. It reminds us that even in hardship, we are not empty. We still have reasons to rise, things to protect, resources to continue. More importantly, the very awareness that we can observe our negative thoughts is itself a sign we are already walking the path of transformation. That awareness is the first crack in the wall of negativity, and gratitude is the light pouring through. Thus, gratitude is not merely a positive attitude, but a weapon of the spirit. It does not promise to erase hardship, but it ensures we will not be buried beneath it. The Stoics found in gratitude a foundation for freedom, for when the mind learns to rest in sufficiency, it can no longer be trapped in the darkness of lack. And in that moment, negativity loses the ground on which it thrives. 8. You are exhausted, not broken. There are times when the mind is flooded with negative thoughts, and we rush to conclude that something is wrong with us, that we are weak, or even broken beyond repair. But the truth is often simpler. You are only exhausted. When body, emotions, and spirit are pushed to their limits for too long, even small tasks become heavy burdens, and ordinary situations are distorted into threats. Exhaustion is not proof of defect. It is a warning that you have given too much energy without replenishment. The Stoics remind us that even fertile fields need time to rest, or they will dry up and become useless. Humans are the same. No one can keep working, enduring pressure, and facing trials without renewal. Without rest, the mind turns small matters into tragedies, breeds suspicion in relationships, and invents bleak stories. These do not reflect your true self. They reflect the depletion of body and mind. The important thing to understand is that exhaustion is not failure. It does not prove you are incapable. It simply shows you have neglected your basic needs for too long. Sleep, stillness, nourishment, movement, and time away from chaos are not luxuries but essentials for clarity. Without them, negative thoughts will only pile higher. But the fault is not in your nature, it is in the absence of restoration. Rest, then, is not indulgence but strategy. It is how you recharge, how you restore clarity, and how you see life as it truly is. A night of deep sleep, an hour without technology, a single refusal of what drains you can open the door back to balance. Remember, You are not broken. You are only exhausted, and exhaustion is temporary. When you listen to body and mind, when you allow yourself true rest, you discover that strength is still there, waiting to rise again. The Stoics believe that recovery is not luxury, but part of disciplined living. And when you grant yourself rest, you are walking the path back to your inherent steadiness. 9. Do not trust the first emotion. Most mistakes in life begin when we hastily trust and act upon the first emotion that arises. A burst of anger makes us speak cruel words. A flicker of fear makes us miss opportunities. A spark of jealousy destroys trust. The first emotion is like lightning in the night. It illuminates for an instant, but distorts the whole scene. If we treat it as truth and act on it, our lives will be tossed about by crude, instinctive reactions. The Stoics understood well the nature of immediate emotions. They called them initial impressions, sudden responses born of instinct, memory, fear, or desire. They do not reflect objective reality. They are fleeting sensations the mind produces before reason has the chance to judge. Wisdom, therefore, does not lie in erasing emotions, but in the ability to delay reaction, observe them, and then choose our action. If we let the first emotion lead us, life becomes like a small boat in a storm, sometimes lifted, sometimes crushed. But if we can remain still in that first moment, we see that emotions are like waves. They rise and fall. None lasts forever. A calm pause of a few breaths can save us from decisions that bring years of regret. What must be remembered is that emotions are not commands. They are signals pointing to something happening, but they do not oblige us to obey. Like a notification flashing on a screen, we can read it, understand it, and dismiss it if unnecessary. The Stoics called this the mastery of impressions, a vital skill for preserving inner freedom. Whenever a strong emotion strikes, tell yourself, wait before reacting. That pause, even if only seconds, creates space for reason to enter. In that stillness, we cease to be prisoners of emotion and become discerning observers. And with clarity, we act according to values and virtue, not under the sway of fleeting impulses. The Stoics believed that a free mind is one no longer dragged by its first emotions. It knows that truth must be seen through the lens of calm. And when we learn patience with our emotional waves, we not only avoid painful mistakes, but also discover a lasting peace in the midst of life's turbulence. The most important truth I have realized is that the quiet repetition of small actions is what builds lasting strength. There is no shortcut to training the will, and no comfort can replace inner discipline. Those who long for peace yet avoid hardship are, in truth, moving against the nature of growth. For me, the essence lies in clearly discerning what is within my control and directing energy toward it, rather than being carried away by what is external. Mental steadiness, firmness in action, and the ability to uphold principle amid change are the true measures of strength. When people are patient enough to practice this spirit, they not only build a disciplined life, but also leave behind an example for others to follow. If you find these reflections valuable, please like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you won't miss what comes next. For the training of mind and spirit is a long journey, and each day offers a chance to take one more steady step. And finally, always remember, the choices you make today will shape the person you become tomorrow. See you in the next video. It's also a form of courage, for it does not deny pain but chooses to face it with light. Instead of letting darkness dominate, it fixes the mind on what remains valuable. This is not avoidance, but affirmation.